Hi Mark, I'm Edith and my Chinese name is Light0 and my number is S04411039. I am a freshman in NCUE and the title for the video is Steve Jobs How to Live Before You Die. I'm going to begin. Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement for one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is the closest I've been gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you three stories from my life. That's it. No big deal, just three stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out from Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so because before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born, and my biological mother was a young unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, of course. My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college, but I never chose a college that almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea of how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all the money my parents have saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at that time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with, and I would walk the 7 miles across the town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I love it, and much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every door was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amounts of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artificially subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when I were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all come back to me, and we decided out into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. And I had never dropped in on that single course in college. And the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces on proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows had just copied the Mac, it likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something you got this destiny like karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off to the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky I found what I loved to do early in life. And I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a 2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh. A year earlier, I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you got fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well, but then our visions of the future began to diverge. And eventually we had a falling off. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone. And it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had that the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, and that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Norris and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turns of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see then, but it turns out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. Less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods in my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Necas, another company named Pizza and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable terms of event, Apple bought Next and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance, and Lauren and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was always testing medicine, but I guess the passion needed. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I love was what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I had looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I wanted to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important thing I've ever encountered to help me make the real choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it's clearly showed tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was, and the doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything you thought you have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure that everything is bottomed up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I live with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a bedside where they stuck an endoscope down of my throat, through my stomach into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas, and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, The doctor started crying because it turns out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery and thankfully I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is a destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you, but someday, not too long from now, it will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice, heart, and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the last 60s, before personal computers and desktop publishing. So it was all made by typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sold off like Google's in paperback for 35 years before Google came along. I was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stewart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth catalog. And then when we had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-70s and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you are so adventurous. Beneath were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed up. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.